This is an emotional story for me, and I've never really told it in front of people, to the public. I'm not a public speaker. I'm not a scholar. And when Danielle invited me to come and speak here, I just want you to let you know I haven't done this before in public. So there might be some emotions, just kind of bear with me. First of all, thank you all for coming. I live in Colorado, so I thought it was cold there until I came here. So, my name is Issam Morris. We'll talk about the name in a minute because it's a strange name, Issam and the Morris. But I kind of want to go to kind of the beginning a little bit here, where I come from. So this is kind of a map of Lebanon and Palestine. And I come from a village called Lubia. Now, Lubia doesn't exist anymore. When Israel was created, it was destroyed, and the Israelis actually built a pine tree forest on top of it. And they also built a new settlement next to it. And so the village was kind of between Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee, right? So those of you who know that Jesus walked on water, that's how close my family comes from. And of course Nazareth. And so we were like, I think the village I think is about 13 miles from Nazareth. So I always joke with my kids and I tell them that we have divine blood. So 1948, when Israel was created, and my family fled, and they fled north and they went to Tyre in Lebanon. Just outside Tyre, there was a camp called Burj Now, as you've seen pictures and you know camps, usually they start with tents. But as over the years and over the months and years, these tents became kind of solid structures and kind of houses. So this is kind of a fuzzy picture of the camp that I actually was born in and grew in. This is a modern picture. They used to have these kind of two-story buildings. It was just kind of a one-story building with tin tops, actually, the zinc, the metal roofs. My father married and had 5 kids, but unfortunately his wife died, natural causes. And so then he married my mom, and he had 8 kids with my mom. So 6 sisters and 2 kids, two boys, me and my brother Ali. So I was born in Burj We were poor, everybody else was poor. My dad is a shoe repairman, and he had a small shop in the camp. My first memories of the war, very vividly, I remember probably I was about 4 years old, and I was playing outside with my cousins and my brother, and I think we were counting marbles or something, and the Israeli planes were just hitting really close by, and we kind of rushed inside, and my mom was making bread, and I remember she had a black sweater on, and we were kind of cowering in the corner of the house. Other times, obviously, kind of growing in the camp, there's always bombings around us. The Israelis just kind of shelling. Bomb shelters were kind of part of our lives. I went to a school in the camp run by the UNRWA. All the schools have bomb shelters there. So it was kind of part of the life inside the camp. Now my dad, so I had 5 half brothers from my dad's first wife, and my brother Khalid, the oldest one, managed to. He went to Kuwait, and he was working in Kuwait for a few years, and actually managed to save some money and buy an apartment in Beirut, in Sabra, Beirut, opposite a hospital called Gaza Hospital. Now, unfortunately, or sadly, my brother actually died in a car, my half-brother died in a car accident in Kuwait. And obviously that devastated the whole family. So around 1978, we actually moved to that apartment from Burj Shamali to Sabra in Beirut. And I went to a school there so I lived in Sabra. My school was in Chatila. It was called the Galilee School. And my dad bought a very small shop to kind of continue his shoe repair business. And of course, during that time, war is raging. Lebanon also didn't just have to deal with the Israelis, but they also had to deal with its own internal civil war. And so I remember playing soccer outside and being sniped on by the Christian side of Beirut, East Beirut. Just constant bombing. So war was constant. It was always there. So even as a child, you kind of always had that constant fear, constant. We had to, you go outside to play, and then your parents will tell you, don't forget how we trained you, that if you hear the bombs, to jump on the ground and basically cover your head and cover your ears for protections. So showing just a map of Beirut. So in 1982, June of 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon. And one of the first places that they actually bombed was Sports City. So I'll show a map in a second, but it's very close to where Sabra is. And so we actually ended up fleeing. So as Israel invaded Lebanon, so they came from the south, moving up north. And so they kind of occupied Tyre, Sidon, and all this area. And then they reached Beirut, and they besieged Beirut. Now we managed to escape and run actually to Beirut, sent to Beirut. And obviously with all the other refugees, and they're all, trying to sleep, trying to find a place to stay anywhere. And we ended up in a kind of overtaking a college, all the families, called Beirut University College, BUC. And so we actually took over one of the rooms there with 3 other families. I think there were about 25 people living in a very small classroom. Food was scarce at that time. The besiege was just similar to what they're doing now in Gaza. No food allowed, nothing is allowed. I actually do remember kind of me and my cousin and some other friends actually walking around Beirut itself, kind of scrounging around for any food actually we can get. Now in August, I believe, of 82, there was a ceasefire agreement between the Israelis and the PLO. So the PLO, the Palestinian fighters who were in Lebanon at that time. And that agreement was that the PLO would actually leave Lebanon, go to other countries, and Israel would not enter Beirut. And the guarantees the safety of the Palestinians who were left behind and the refugees, their safety will actually also be guaranteed. So that was in end of August 82. The PLO left in September, early September, I believe, end of August, early September, they left Beirut. And then what happened is all the refugees, including us, everybody started to go back home. Some obviously were in ruins, ours was still standing. We went home, and that was September of 82. Now, one thing I want to add is, while we were those 3 months being at BUC, we started hearing rumors that one of my half-brothers was actually killed by the Israeli forces. And for years, we could never really figure out why or where, because we could never find his body or anything like that. And then several years later, we actually discovered that he was in a bomb shelter in Burj Shamali, by Tyre, where I was born. and that the Israelis had bombed the bomb shelter and actually killed everybody there. They did not recognize him until, actually, they only recognized him because his body was all disfigured. His corpse was disfigured. They only recognized him by his shirt. This is going to show you a picture from close to where I actually live in Sabra, where all the bullets, and you can see the buildings there kind of just completely peppered with machine guns there. This is a picture of my half-brother who was killed in the camp, in the bomb shelter. He was engaged 3 months before the invasion, and so he never got to get married. So we came back to Sabra, to my apartment, which is opposite Gaza Hospital. And so this is, I just kind of want to show you kind of from my house. Now this is Gaza Hospital recent now. Obviously this wasn't the case because Gaza is now, was taken over by, it's non-functioning and it was taken over by all refugees. And so you can see, you know, people hanging their clothes and this picture here is from my house looking down. So this area here was actually the emergency entrance to Gaza Hospital. So to this side here, this is actually from our apartment, and you can see the mosque. And down here is the street, and where I'm looking is I'm looking south. And this street, this old picture that I grabbed from somewhere. This picture was taken from Gaza Hospital. So on top of this building here, looking south. And this is the main street of Sabra and Chatila. And you can see the edge of the mosque here. You can see the mosque here too, so just kind of a different angle. This is just another picture just to kind of show you. Remember this picture because I'm going to come back to it. But basically, my house is in this building here. This is Gaza Hospital. This was the emergency area, the emergency room, or the entrance. And then you can see the edge of the mosque. And down behind the mosque is that long street down south for Sabra and Chatila. Now, the PLO left in September. Lebanon elected a new president, Bashir Ismail. Bashir Ismail was a Christian, and so the Christians were fighting the Muslims, the PLO, so that's the whole civil war. He was elected and he was assassinated on September 14th. Now at this time, even though the PLO had left, Israel was still surrounding Beirut. They had not left. Once the president was assassinated, the next day on the 15th, which was a Wednesday, Israel entered Beirut, breaking the ceasefire agreement that they already had signed. And that ceasefire agreement was actually brokered by the Reagan administration, that Israel would not enter Beirut. So under the guise of the assassination, they actually entered Beirut. Now when they entered Beirut, they entered the main areas, but then they surrounded Sabra and Chatila camp and the surrounding area. So that was the 15th, Wednesday the 15th. So during that day, actually me and my friend, so you can see City Sportive, or the sports city. So this is actually a stadium, it's a sports complex. And I mentioned that this was one of the first places that when Israel invaded Lebanon, actually that was one of the first places that they bombed. And when the Israelis came, being young and, you know, I went with my friend and we actually saw the Israeli tanks move in. And as they were moving in, they actually, they threw away some of the shells that they had been using. So, tank shells. So, you know, we were kind of cowering in the corner, kind of watching, kind of just drive by. And after they kind of left, I went ahead and actually I grabbed one of the empty shells and I took it home, carrying it. Maybe Kurt will recognize this, but in Lebanon, for some reason, we used to use those and use them as vases. And so I actually grabbed that and I took it home, and my mom was furious with me and told me that if I don't get rid of it, I'm going to get a beating. So that was Wednesday, the 15th. Thursday, the 16th, all of a sudden we start to hear kind of shelling and shootings coming from the south side in this area here of, from Chatila. And nobody could figure out exactly what's going on, because don't forget, again, we are surrounded, the Israelis are surrounding the whole area. No one is allowed in or out. And as we, living in front of a hospital, where do people come? They come to the hospital, it's a Red Cross, it's a Red Crescent, safety would be there. And so all of a sudden these streams of families start to kind of come to the hospital. And they're saying they're killing people, there's a massacre going on, the phalangists are coming, they're killing, and then of course, there are injured people who are actually streaming also towards the hospital. And then that night, it's constant bombing, constant shooting, and all of a sudden, at night, you have these flares that are just shooting up and over the camps. You can hear the gunshots. You can see the flares. It's lit up. The next day, Friday, the 16th, the 17th, more people are coming. There's tension there. The screaming, there's a massacre. The screaming is a massacre. And by that afternoon, on Friday, that afternoon, all of a sudden people start to kind of a little bit kind of ease out or move away from the hospital itself. And the places they would go, because don't forget, it's not just, they surrounded the camps, the two camps, and the kind of the surrounding area. So there's a bit of area here they could kind of escape to. But you couldn't really break away. And so a lot of people just started to kind of move out from around the Gaza hospital. So there's Gaza hospital here, right? And so people start just to kind of stream out of here as far as they can. And by the evening, Gaza hospital almost became like a ghost town. And at that time, my mom said, I think we need to leave. Now my dad was reluctant. He's like, well, they went to Beirut, Tyre, they went to Resided as they were invading, up north. There was no massacres there, nothing. Nonetheless, my mom convinced him that we need to leave. Now my brother is Ali. He's older than me. He's 16, so he's ripe age for So my mom gave him some money and said, try and break away from the siege, right? There has to be some sort of a small street that you can get out of. And so he left, and we left, and we took some clothes with us, and we tried to go as far as we can to the Fakani area to try and find a safe place to stay. Nobody could break out of the siege, and so we actually ended up in a kindergarten called Mama Najah. So we went inside there, we took out over a classroom, moved the desks, and slept there. Now my brother, who was trying to break away, was not able to break away. But he did find us at Mama Najah, so he actually came and spent that night with us. Now we woke up in the morning, early morning on Saturday the 18th, and he was cold. We needed more blankets. So he said, I'm gonna go home, and I'm gonna go grab some blankets. So he goes home, and he reaches here, this area here. And just before he goes up to the building, now remember these structures didn't exist. This was the main entrance. This is all now refugees, right? And while he's standing here, he actually saw the phalangists actually moving into position. So he quickly turned around and ran and sprinted to us and told us the phalangists had reached the Gaza hospital. So my mom gave him his blessings, gave him a kiss, gave him some money, and said, escape any way you can. And she said, as she did that, we kind of also, because now it's panic, so we kind of try to escape anywhere. Then all of a sudden, people are listening to the radio, they're seeing journalists coming in, the massacre, there's a massacre, there's a massacre. So there's a whole panic going on. And what happened is the Israelis, they found out that there's a massacre going on, and they actually ended up breaking that siege, and so they kind of let the siege off the whole area. And then you had all these press come in, ambulances come in, all that stuff. So it's a huge, huge commotion. Aimlessly running around, walking around the area, couldn't figure out. We went back to the kindergarten, and my mom goes, "I'm going to go and check on the house." She goes to go and check on the house. 2 hours go by, and we haven't heard anything from my mom. Now, my dad wanted to go and check on her, so I actually went with him. I said, "I want to go with you. I want to go with you." So I go, tag along with my dad. We get to the house, we go to the apartment, my mom is not there, come downstairs, we're literally, again, by the van standing here, and then all of a sudden we see my mom coming from around the corner. And she's screaming at my dad, she said, "You thought they're not gonna kill people? I'm gonna come and see." She literally grabbed him by the hand and said, "Come." And she dragged him. They told me, "Go back to the kindergarten." I said, "No, I wanna come with you." "Go back." "No, I'm gonna come with you." And so, so I kind of followed them down that street that I showed you earlier. And as I'm walking, I can see figures on the ground, and I couldn't make them out yet, right? And as I kind of approach, then I see these two old men dead on the ground. One was wearing thobe with the stripes, and the other one was wearing all black, kind of on his side. Now remember, I'm 12 years old. Now remember, and I've seen death because I live in a hospital, next to a hospital. I have a bird's eye view of the emergency. Anytime there's bombs, anything like that, I see it. When the morgue is full, they used to actually put the bodies with the white shrouds that you've seen in Gaza pictures, right? All in front of the building that I'm in. But somehow that shocked me because I saw those. Because there was this constant wailing of people screaming and just sadness and the smell of death because they've been there for 2-3 days. And I just freaked out. And I screamed to my mom and dad, and I'm like, "I'm going back, I'm going back." And I ran back to the kindergarten where we stayed. Next day, so my brother, who tried to escape the siege, Ali, he did actually manage to break free. But then when he heard that there was a massacre or had happened, he came back. And so when he came back that next day, then I found the courage to actually go with him. And we actually walked down that whole street. And so everything that you see from the massacre of Sabra and Chatila, I actually saw it firsthand. So this is the first people, these are the two dead people that I saw. This is where I couldn't continue anymore. But I did the next day with my brother. Nobody has ever been persecuted for this. The Christian might have done it, the phalangists. This was engineered by Israel. They surrounded the camps. They lit up the skies. This is a fuzzy picture, but my mom is in the background. This is my mom. Now, 2 days later, we're back home in the apartment, and my brother's down, by the hospital. And lo and behold, around the corner comes a doctor that was working in the hospital, called Paul Morris. Now, Paul Morris, my brother had translated for him before his clinic, in the hospital. My brother spoke English also, so he's able to help him translate with his patients. And so he knew Paul Morris, and so Paul Morris around the corner. Nobody knew who's alive, who's dead. They hugged and had, what happened. And so Paul Morris was actually in the hospital when the phalangists reached the Gaza hospital, as my brother also saw. But at that stage, that's when the news broke out that there was a massacre. So the killers didn't continue kind of up all the way, and so they kind of retreated. But as they retreated, they actually took all the doctors and nurses and they killed the patients. They picked out the Lebanese and the Palestinian nurses, killed them, never to be seen again. But being a British citizen, there was a couple of British citizens there, American and so forth, so they were spared, and they actually took them to Sports City, which was the Israeli command center, and they handed them to the Israelis. So Paul Morris came to, went upstairs to my family, and he became a very, very good friend of the family, and so he really wanted to help my family. So after the massacre, Paul Morris was there for about 9 months, and then he went to Cyprus. Now, Paul was married to a Cypriot named Mary, and so he had lived in Cyprus, and so he went back basically home to Cyprus. And he tried different avenues to help my mom. I was 12 at that age, I had younger sisters, and so then he decided that they actually, the best thing to do is maybe actually go and live with him. And so in 1983, one of his American friends came over to Lebanon and basically told my family that if I'm gonna leave, I need to leave by tomorrow. Because don't forget, Lebanon was still in a mess, it's still a civil war, so even with the invasion and so forth, and the airport was closed. I had 24 hours to basically say bye to my parents. And I had to leave through Beirut port, which was controlled by the Christian phalangists at that time. But I was with an American, and I was young, and they let me through. And so I took a boat from Lebanon all the way to Cyprus. And the next day I registered in a school. So this was Limassol, Cyprus, a city called Limassol. And so I attended a school called the Logos School for a year. I struggled at the beginning. I struggled not academically. I was a fairly bright kid. But I just struggled with the culture, with the religion, with everything that's kind of, with my own luggage, if you will, or baggage, I guess. The troubles I got in was more fights, being in detention, and seeing a map of Palestine that said Israel, and me crossing it over and saying Palestine, got me even more trouble. But yeah, so then I was there for a year, then we moved to Nicosia, and I went to a school called Falcon School. It was an English school there. Did the English system. There's one video I kind of want to just quickly share with you. It's from a documentary by one of the British soldiers that actually came to Lebanon after the massacre. So I just kind of want to. Just wanted you to hear the sound that I was hearing.
During the massacre, some strange
This is Issam on the
soldiers
left.
came into the camp, and they came to his house and killed his father and his mother and 3 brothers, and he was shot also. He lay with them about, for many hours until some friends came and took him to Gaza hospital, and he stayed there for many weeks. Before the massacre, he wasn't so quiet like now, because after the massacre he is sometimes very quiet and he doesn't want to play with us. It's a very sad story. Many of my friends in school had some of their families killed.
So if you don't recognize that, actually me speaking.
Issam, who interviewed you for that YouTube?
I don't remember, but this is the name of the documentary. The thing is, I actually did not discover. I knew that I was in a documentary, but I actually did not know the name of the documentary. And with with YouTube these days, you can watch anything. And so I actually did a search about it, and then I was kind of quickly watching it, and then I actually saw myself. This was 3 years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago. And so, yeah. This is actually my school in Chatila. And this is actually me sitting on top of the entrance of a bomb shelter. This is my dad. My dad passed away in '99, but this is actually his shop in Chatila, and you see this little kind of a sewing machine for shoes. It's you can see the back here. This was a very small shop that he had. Before I go further, I just want to kind of pivot to being in Cyprus, and then I go into school, and I attended school there, and I did O levels and A levels, and then I met my girlfriend, who became my wife, Melissa. And then after that, so Melissa and I actually kept in touch long distance. I went to college in London, and she ended up coming to Colorado. But there was a time when the last time I saw my parents, I was 16 in '86. And then because of the Civil War at that stage, the next time that I saw them was actually when the Civil War was in 1990. So I was 16, and then the next time I saw them, I was 20 in college. But ever since, I go there every 2 years. I am extremely close to my siblings. My sister, who's adopted with me, Huda. So I think I skipped one part there. So when I left Lebanon on the boat, and I moved, in around '86, I was 16 because I didn't have a passport. I was a refugee, and I couldn't really stay in Cyprus much longer. And that's when my parents and Paul, they decided maybe we should just go through the adoption. And so he actually adopted me, and adopted my sister Huda, and that's where the Morris comes from. My name is actually Issam Morris. My other siblings, remember I said I had 6 sisters and 1 brother. Ali is still in Lebanon. He works with the UNRWA. He actually just retired. Huda, as Danielle said, she's actually a doctor now in Australia. My sister, Mona, went to Sweden in '87 for political asylum. She's a teacher. I have a sister who went to Germany, and The rest are actually still in Lebanon. Because we see each other every 2 years or so, this last trip, because of what's happening in Gaza and was happening in Lebanon and the whole region, we actually decided to meet up in Turkey. And so, five of my siblings were actually ended up going to Turkey. My mom, this is my mom, sorry, I introduced you to my mom. To the right, this is actually a picture in Turkey. This was last in October. My mom is in the middle with her hand up. I have my 4 sisters up front. My 2 other sisters stayed in Lebanon, they couldn't make it. And then there's me, and there's my brother, Ali. And this is my mom with her grandkids. This was also in Turkey. This is my son. And he actually has a tattoo, a map of Palestine. And in Arabic it says, Ailati Awalan, family first. This is my daughter. This is the computer that I'm on now, actually is hers. Her name is Layla, that's why you. And this is a good picture of all of us in Turkey, the grandkids, the kids. So we came from Australia, some came from America, some came from Sweden, Germany, for this family reunion. And we're hoping to do it again next year. So I have a quiz. Who said this in 2019? Anyone who wants to thwart the establishment of a Palestinian state has to support bolstering Hamas and transferring money to Hamas. This is the part of our strategy to isolate the Palestinians in Gaza from the Palestinians in the West Bank. Yeah, okay. So you can tell how absurd this whole conflict is. And this is my favorite quote. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. The atrocities that's happening in Gaza, it's happening everywhere in that region. The atrocities that you can claim your right to a land from 2,000 years ago, I challenge anyone for a DNA test. Because if you go 2,000 years ago, why don't you go to 3,040 years ago, before you crossed the desert? You could end up in Egypt, right? The idea that the absurdity that someone born in Brooklyn can come and steal my land and steal my home and tell me I have no claim to it. The absurdity that you can surround a camp and massacre 3,000 people and pretend that that's not your fault. The absurdity that you can besiege a huge population of 2 million people and claim you're defending yourself. You are defending an occupation. What did Israel do the first thing that they, after October 7th? No water, no electricity, no food, prison. And the absurdity that the West still turns a blind eye to all these issues, right? When Putin invaded Ukraine, they were dismissed from the Olympics, they were dismissed from all sorts of other stuff. Even if you're an athlete, you couldn't raise the Russian flag. You had to go under some other flag. You guys seen this guy, right?
Yes.
This guy is called Hantala. And he was by Naji Ali, who's a Palestinian cartoonist. And when he was kicked out of Palestine, his family, he was 10 years old. And so he created this character that will never grow up. So Hantala is always 10 years old. And he's always 10 years old until Palestinians return back home. I have a certain attachment to it for two reasons. One, I left home when I was 13. And every time I go there, I go as a 13-year-old. I'm 55 now. I go there and I have the mentality, and literally it's like going back in time. It's a very strange feeling. And the other thing is, his son actually went to college with me in London. Naji Ali, the creator of this, was actually assassinated in London in '87, I believe. But I went to college with his son, so. That is my last slide. Thank you.
Issam, some of your pauses are as telling as what you say to us.
Thank you.
And too many similarities of what's going on today, that's for sure. This is time for a Q&A, and I have a question to get things rolling. When the Israelis invaded Lebanon, and Lebanon was in the midst of a civil war, did the Christians and Muslims get together to fight the Israelis?
They did not. The Palestinians were pretty much. So Lebanon has its. We'll exclude the Palestinians out for a bit. We just put them to the side. So the refugees obviously causes issue, just like the migrants here also cause friction. So Lebanon was the actual government of Lebanon is the president has to be a Christian Maronite. The prime minister has to be a Sunni Muslim, right? So it's broken up like that. And so the constitution spells out how the government needs to be. So there's always friction. So when this was set up, it was, when it was occupied by France at that time. And at that time, the Christian Maronites were 60% and the Muslims were 40%. But then over a period of 20, 30 years, that changed, and the whole demographic kind of changed. And so there's a bit of friction there already. And now we have the Palestinians and the refugees coming in, and then also the PLO, the Palestinian fighters. And so now the Christian Maronites, they're kind of sided with Israel, right? And so during the Civil War, even though it's kind of internal, but they kind of still sided with Israel. And so when Israel invaded Lebanon, Beirut is split into East and West Beirut at that time. East Beirut was the Christian side, West Beirut was the Muslim side. So even though when they occupied West Beirut versus East Beirut, there's no fighting whatsoever. So the Christians were actually on the side of the Israelis. So they did not side with the fighting against the Israelis. Now, after the invasion and before the massacre, the Israelis wanted Lebanon to recognize Israel. And at that stage, the Christians who were kind of supporting the Israelis, they said, no, we're not going to recognize you. You're kind of an occupying force, and we don't need you anymore. And so that's kind of what happened.
Other questions?
Could use the mic.
Gotta be.
I'll hear the question and then I'll repeat it for everyone, okay?
I just wanted clarification how it was, Issam, that you left with Paul Morris. You were the only one in your family?
I was the only one. Yeah, I was the only one in my family, and then my sister followed me 3 years later.
And that happened because you knew him in advance? they were.
Correct, because if you remember, he was working up in the hospital. My brother had helped him translate, and then he became a very good friend of the family. And then he left Lebanon, but he wanted to help the family, so he actually took us out.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yes, when you spoke of the Christian phalangists, and you also, I don't know if that's the same group as the Christian Maronites, but I'm wondering the connection with the Spanish, during the Spanish Civil War, the Christian phalangists who were connected with the Catholic Church there. So I'm thinking, is there some sort of historical?
Yeah.
Could you repeat the question?
Whether the Christian phalangists of Lebanon have a connection to the Christian phalangists in Spain?
Yes.
I don't think there is. I think it's just a name. Yeah. In Arabic they're called Katabib, but when they translate it to English, they become the phalangists. Is that right?
Yeah, the symbol of the phalangists is a fist. That is a fascist symbol in Europe. So they may not be direct connection, but both were fascists.
Did you all hear that?
No.
Kurt said the symbol of a phalanges is the fist, which is a fascist symbol throughout Europe, correct?
Correct.
Other questions or comments?
You have come through so much, and yet you are a wonderful person. Say a little bit about your life since this, and how you're doing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had great parents and I have a great mom. I call her my moral compass. So she keeps me grounded. One thing I kind of want to mention is just to kind of show you the philosophy, their philosophy. So when I go to Lebanon, so even though I live in an apartment, we're actually better off than most Palestinian refugees. You saw the picture of Gaza Hospital, or what used to be the hospital, kind of occupied. The last time I went there, so there's no water, right? It's the water that they get inside the apartment. It goes to a big kind of water container, and then it gets sucked up to the 6th floor is where I live, and there's another smaller container. That's the water that they use. That water is seawater. So I go, I'm like, Mom, this, like, how can you wash? How can you, like, they use it to wash their clothes. Now when they drink, they actually buy kind of, clean water. But she looks at me and she said, it's a blessing, right? In my mind, in my Western mind, right? How can you wash with salt water? To their mind, it's a blessing that she has washed, right? So that paradigm, that shift is completely, I go there and I actually get rejuvenated because of, the worry of what's going to come tomorrow is somewhat there, but they don't, it's in God's hands, and so that philosophy where, me, I might struggle with, but I go there and I'm like, okay, I kind of readjust my needle again. So after I graduated, I met Melissa, went to college, studied computer science, chemical engineering, but I never used it, so I switched to computer science. But after I graduated in '94, I actually wanted to be with Melissa, so I moved to the United States. And found a job, we got married. I have 3 beautiful kids. I have a beautiful granddaughter now, so I'm actually a grandparent. But they're all doing wonderful. I try and teach my kids, my philosophy, so I'm doing well, and I'm doing well, I think, because of the base that I had. So even though I was 12, 13 and I left I had enough love in me, I had enough sense, maybe, that I kind of mentioned at the beginning. I kind of was a little bit rough for me just because I was young, and but even then I didn't go stab somebody. I crossed Israel and I went to Palestine. I had a couple of fights. I think I was just maybe a normal kid in many ways. I do compartmentalize a lot. This is the first time, by the way, that I ever spoke in public about it. My kids, my Danielle, Melissa, everybody kind of knows. So I just wasn't sure how to react. So, but I'm amongst friends, so I appreciate it. You made it easier for me.
Question. You had no papers, no passport, no nothing. What was that process like for you at that young age?
Repeat the question.
Yeah, I was asked if I had any legal papers, since I was kind of a refugee. So Lebanon, so we're all refugees. Anybody who's born a refugee, a Palestinian, will remain a refugee. And they actually give you what they call laissez-passer, which is a document stating that you have a document from the Lebanese government stating that you are a Palestinian refugee. And a Palestinian refugee, obviously you cannot really travel too much and stuff like that. So when I used to travel to Cyprus, back to Lebanon, I actually used to have letters from the school stating that I'll be back, letters from guardians or sponsors on the other side, where I'm going. And so I had a file with me all the time, even at that age, even at that kind of young age, to actually kind of assure the destination that I'm not going to stay there, or but to your point, we had what they call a laissez-passer passport. So my mom, who was a refugee right after 80 years, she we had to wait for her to get the visa to go to Turkey, and that takes 4 or 5 weeks and stuff like that. So it's still kind of the same process where they have to go to the embassy and kind of prove that you are coming back, that you have financial help and stuff like that. So assets, I should say. But yeah, it's extremely difficult.
Greg?
You say this is your first time speaking. Don't let it be your last time.
Thank you.
You're very easy to listen to.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Kajal.
So poverty is a problem in Lebanon. There are Palestinians that are poor. This question is, what is the price of water for drinking? Are they, we talk about food, putting food on the table, but water seems to me to be much more significant. They have to afford that.
There is so I haven't been there since 22. Lebanon is always inflation. There's always inflation, right? So the cost is huge. I just want to kind of pivot a little bit on the poverty piece. Palestinians are not allowed to work in Lebanon legally. So a lot of the work that they do is with the UNRWA, right? Being a school at an UNRWA school, doing a lot of the labor work. But as far as actual professional jobs, as a Palestinian, you're not allowed to do that. You're still considered a refugee. As far as expense, because of the inflation, you get your money in Lebanese liras, right? With the inflation, if I get $100 a week, 100 liras a week, that 100 liras a week, the next week it might be worth to buy stuff, right? Half of that. And so the poverty is extreme now in Lebanon, unless you are paid in dollars. Because if you paid in dollars and you make $100, that's still $100 that you can actually buy food and you can buy water and anything kind of expensive. So the poverty is really, really weighing heavily on the Lebanese economy.
John?
Given the fact that we know that it was the Nationalist Party in South Africa that negotiated the end of apartheid. It wasn't the Progressive Federal Party, who had no political status. Would you support progressives who want to work for a change, working with Jews and Israelis who identify themselves as Zionists, but not necessarily as right-wing or fanatical? Doesn't it make sense to negotiate with the people who are in power there than just a continuing battle that will never end? I'm not saying surrender. That's not what I'm saying.
About 5 questions.
Yeah. That's a lot to pack in.
It's, as soon as you mention the word Zionism, I have to retrieve there a little bit. Just because the idea of Zionism itself is you are going to be taking over my land. This is how I interpret it, right? Because the Zionist movement itself, when it first established, it was not to go to Palestine, right? It was to establish a home for the Israeli, for the Jewish people who've been persecuted in Europe.
Yes, but that's true. But the same story happened in South Africa. You had a settler colonial population that created a state, and when they finally realized they could not continue, they negotiated the end of it, rather than have a civil war that would have led to,
I think
rivers of blood.
Yeah. I think the solution for Palestine lies within Israel itself.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes. But I didn't say Zionism. When you say Zionism, to me, that's
different story.
But if you get hung up on the word Zionism, you won't be able to find people who want to find a solution. They'll say, yeah, I'm a Zionist, and their vision of Zionism is not what we see. And it takes time for people to make that evolution.
I don't think we can.
To me, so the Zionist movement will continue. The support of the U.S. will continue. Israel will try and get, or the Zionist movement will try and get out of Palestine as much as possible. But at some stage, the society itself within Israel will realize that historically they'll start to realize it, right? Like to me in Gaza, there was an attempt to get the Gazans out, right? They're still out probably with this new Board of Peace and stuff like that.
Madness, that idea.
The thing is that Israel also has the thorn in Israel's side that's not talked about is the fact that 20% of the Israelis in Israel are actually Palestinian, right? And so we can say that the growth rate and at some stage they're going to have a certain power that's going to also really impact how Israel behaves in the future.
I think one thing you're saying, John, is that there is a range of Zionists. They're not all, you can't lump them all in one bucket.
That's right. I mean, and it's important to recognize that, and to find the people you can work with.
Right.
Even if they call themselves Zionists.
I think for a Palestinian, to hear the word Zionist is gigantic red flag, and that's the difficult thing. There was another question, Liza?
Yes, just one thing and then a question. To my mind, the agenda of Zionism is the eradication of Palestine. Anyway, let's leave it there. I want to go back to Sabra and Chatila, where about 3,000 people were killed. Is that correct? And I'd like to know what was do you know the total population of the two camps? And it's wonderful that your family survived. I guess it's because you were able to move out of that hospital area far enough.
I'm not sure the exact population, probably 100 to 200,000 in the camps. As far as the 3,000, 2,000, there's always a dispute in the number of how many were killed. Because don't forget, they actually took some of the people back with them also, so that they weren't killed in Sabra and Chatila. What saved us is in the sense that we were we were north of Sabra and Chatila, or up on the north end of it, that when the Phalangists, they came from the south.
Right.
And they moved up when they moved up. Had the massacre not been discovered maybe for another day or two, then that would probably continue down that.
Right.
When they reached Gaza hospital, and when my brother saw them, and that's when the news broke out, and that's why they they retreated and they got a safe passage back out of the, by the Israelis, in the sense that they retreated. But that's really what saved us. Is if the massacre continued, that have continued all the way to where the checkpoints and the Israelis had surrounded the whole area.
Did you say one of your brothers was lost or died or?
So during the invasion, because I grew up I was born in South Lebanon in Tyre, Burj al-Shamali, so that was the camp that I was in. My brother was still there, and so when Israel invaded Lebanon, they kind of invaded Tyre, Sidon, and then they reached Beirut. And my brother was still in the camp, and he was in a bomb shelter when he was.
Oh, that's right, the bomb shelter.
He was killed in a bomb shelter.
Thank you.
In the very back.
I'm thinking that what needs to be done is to get your message and the message of other Palestinians, the Palestinian story, to Israelis and to Jews. Now, Jewish Voice for Peace, the members there probably know quite a bit about what happened, but how can you and others reach Israelis and Jews who don't know your story?
Do you mean his personal story or the general story?
Both, I suppose.
So I had some friends who actually knew my story, but then with what was happening in Gaza, I don't go online. I'm not I stay away because I think I would lose my mind. It's just not worth it to me because there's lots of trolls, lots of people like that. So, but I had some friends who actually kind of knew my story, and then after October 7th, they were actually so adamant about what they believe that kind of that relationship collapsed. To me, it's an incremental change in the mindset. So I have my kids, right? So they always react to someone who asks them a question, or they say, "I support Israel," or "I don't know what's happening." My kids tend to react a little bit kind of like, in an angry way. And I always tell them that's really just, it's ignorance. It's not that they don't support you, they just don't really know what the story is. And if you can just kind of give them a little bit of information to kind of, so their mind kind of inquire, rather than take what the media is saying, rather than what because the media also uses certain words and manipulates how, even when it tells you the message that you think is actually supporting the Palestinian cause, for example, but the words that they use are not as strong, if you will. They kind of manipulate. They water it down, if that makes sense. So it's really more of a discussion. It's more of groups like this and more people to kind of just incrementally try and change their mindset and how people kind of think. There's lots of Jews and Israelis, some Israelis who even recognize what's happening. So it's not that they're we're blind to what their pain and they're blind to ours. There has to have some sort of an area there where there is that communication.
Greg?
I'm afraid the West has to forgive themselves for not recognizing the Holocaust before they'll pull back from supporting the Jews. There's this huge inward feeling. We let them, and we're still we're still asking for forgiveness.
Yeah, I think your point is that we give Israel a little bit more leeway than others because we the West had caused them so much harm.
Got to somehow bring that to a close.
Yeah, I always say that the West kind of that they committed a huge crime against the Jewish faith, and the Palestinians ended up paying for it.
Yes. Yes. Fred?
Thank you so much for sharing this. I was actually in Tyre when you were born. I was there the summer of '71. And I had students from the camp come over and take English at the YMCA where I was working.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we got other overlaps. I was a trustee of BUC for 25 years and helped rebuild that campus after the war. I've been there many times. But I want to just say one thing to a couple points that have been raised to your discussion. The history that we've heard here, the history that's portrayed here, is not a history of isolated events. It's often understood that way in the United States. I think, well, this bad thing happened last Tuesday, this thing happened next week. This is an intentional, long-term project. It's described that way by many scholars as a Zionist project. And the project is what he said, to displace Palestinians and to make Israel be free of any Arab population. That's its goal. That has been its goal from the outset. And the reason it doesn't end, to your point, is Israel has not yet decided that's not going to be successful. They're now in the endgame of normalizing that outcome. South Africa got to the point where even the United States said that's apartheid. Our Secretary of State said you can't call it apartheid. It's not apartheid. We don't see that. Our Secretary of State took the report by his staff that said our weapons were being used against civilians, against U.S. law, and deep-sixed it and refused to issue that publicly so as there was no sanction of visitors. So South Africa and Israel are not in the same spot. If they were in the same spot, you might be right.
Israel is in the place that South Africa was in 1980.
I don't remember this by year, but it's
But
not ready
before they realized that they had to negotiate an end.
They are empowered right now. They are absolutely empowered. And they are empowered with no restraint. You show me one restraint the U.S. has issued against Israel.
I'm not arguing that.
All right, we're going to, well, we got to stop that.
I just want to say my last point. I think the thing to understand is this BDS bill in Minnesota is a niche in this whole problem. 37 states have bills like that. If we can't even call it what it is, if we can't even protest it, if we can't even boycott or act against it civilly, why is that? It's because they don't want it to end and be visible. That's a really important first step for us in Minnesota.
Okay, got it. I will say one thing that I think is fracturing Israelis is economy. And the pocketbook always speaks very, very loud. It's speaking here in this country, and it's starting to speak in Israel. So we don't want to wish bad tidings on anyone, but it is hurting them economically, their policies. John, I'm going to hold off because we're out of time. And I want to thank Issam for a message from your heart.